All right, so for all of y'all that are having a little bit of hard time with the Circumcenter, I'm just going to go ahead and do the next 2 or 3 slides and help you out. So in order to find the Circumcenter, we have to find the perpendicular bisector, and the perpendicular bisector is a line that cuts each one of the triangle segments in half, and it does so at a 90-degree angle. So because it's a perpendicular bisector, the first thing we need to do is cut these segments in half. And in order to do that, we're just simply going to click on those points, find those points, and then find the midpoints. And the midpoint formula is nice and easy. It is just, we add the x's divided by 2, we add the y's divided by 2. So for example, the x's are 4 and 8. So I'm going to write 4 plus 8, and then 6 plus 8. So 4 plus 8 over 2, comma, and then 6 plus 8 over 2. And once we have that with 4 plus 8 over 2, that's 12 over 2, which is 6. And then 6 plus 8 is 14 over 2, which is 7. And a lot of times you can actually see it. If you notice right here, over 6 and up 7, you'll see that right in the middle. So I'm going to come over here and put 6 and 7, and we should have a point that adds in. Okay? And then once we do that, I'm going to go ahead and clear all the draw. I'm just going to do the exact same thing again. So we know this point right here is 8, 8. We know this point right here is 8, 2. So let's see here, 8, 8, and 8, 2. And I just do the exact same thing, 8 plus 8 over 2, 8 plus 2 over 2, x plus x, y plus y, so 16 over 2, 10 over 2, and we have 8 over 5. So I just come over to the table and I add 8, 5 into the table. Okay. And you'll notice it ends up right in the middle. Once again, you should be able to see the middle in each one of these cases. So I'm going to go ahead and move on the screen. You can find the third point on your own. If you go onto the next screen, as I'm walking you through this problem, sorry, my computer's moving just a little slow today. Let's see here. As we go through the next screen, you'll notice that I went ahead and gave you those midpoints. Let's see here, there it is, there it is, there's the midpoints. And now what we need to do is we need to find the perpendicular lines that go through those midpoints. So really nice and easy. What we have to do is we have to find the slope of each one of these lines on the triangle. Okay, so I went ahead and gave you the information over here in the first box. It says in order to find the perpendicular bisector, first pick a midpoint. Let's start with 6, 7. That's this guy right here. Okay. Find the slope of the segment that goes through 6, 7. Remember, rise over run, or we take the 2 y's and we subtract them, divided by the 2 x's, and we subtract them. In this case, the slope is 1/2. So for example, if you look at 4, 6, and 8, 8, 4, 6, and 8, 8, we can go ahead and find the slope by subtracting the y's and then subtracting the x's. So 8 minus 6 divided by 8 minus 4. So let's just write that out. 8 minus 6 over 8 minus 4. And that gives us 2 over 4, which is the same thing as 1/2. Okay, the line that is perpendicular to 1/2 is the opposite reciprocal. So if I want to find the line that is perpendicular to 1/2, I just flip 1/2 to become 2 over 1, and instead of it being a positive, I make it a negative. You'll notice this slope is positive, so it's got to be a negative. Okay, and that's what I tell you in cell number 2. We just flip it and make it its opposite sign, and then we use our translation. So for example, I want that slope, the line is y equals x, that's parent function, and I want it to go through 4, 6. So nice and simple. If I want to go and do this the easiest way, I'm going to put in my new slope, -2 over 1, which is my stretch. Okay, I want it to go through 4, 6. So x, I move it to the right 4, -4. And then I move it up 6, +6. We learned all these with absolute value functions. +6. And you'll notice that it would go through that point. But I don't want it to go through the point. I want through this point. I want it to go through the midpoint. So I'm going to move it over there to 6, 7. So x -6 and +7. And notice that it goes through the midpoint. I can then do the exact same thing with all of the other equations. Really, all I need to do is do this with 2. But let's go ahead and just continue to do this. So I go through, I'm going to clear draw. I'm going to find the slope of the line that goes through 4, 6, and 8, 2. So I'm going to add those on there. So 4, 6. So I'm going to do 6 - 2. So 6 - 2 are my y's. 4 - 8 are my x's. So 6 - 2 is 4. 4 - 8 is -4, and we get -1/1. If I flip that, it still becomes 1/1, but I have to make it its opposite, so it becomes a +1. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to write my equation. I'm going to write it as y equals to 1. And I want it to go through, remember, the midpoint, not the corner, not the vertice of the triangle. So I'm going to go to the midpoint, 6, 4. So I'm going to write y equals 1 x -6. Move it to the right, 6, and then I'm going to move it up 4. Okay, and it's going to go through that point. You can see that it forms a 90-degree angle against that red segment right there. And then there is one last line, which is really easy. It's the one that goes through this midpoint, which is at 8, 5. It's just a flat, straight across line to make that 90-degree angle. So I'm going to just plug that in as y equals to, looks like 5. So y equals to 5. Okay, and there it is. You can see they all go through that same point, which is at 7, 5. And all I did was ask you to find the point in which they intersect. This should be the circumcenter. So 7, 5. Okay, and you can see it shows up right there. That gets rid of, so we found the midpoints, we found the lines that go through the middle. Okay, now the next step that I have you do is create the equation of the circumcenter. And that is on slide number 7. So in order to do that, the first thing we need to do is start with the equation of a circle. I'm going to slide this out of the way so we have just a little bit more space. So find the equation of the circle that goes through all the vertices. It's the circumcenter. So circumscribes the circle. So it goes through all of the vertices, and the center is right here at 7, 5. So the first thing we need to do is set up the equation of a circle. So if you remember that, that is x - h squared plus y minus k squared equals to r squared. And the first thing I always do is I put in the center. Remember, we put in the center as their opposites. So x - 7 squared plus y minus 5 squared equals to r squared. And that sets up the equation of the circle. Now what I need to do is go ahead and use one of the points. I'm going to use 8, 8. It's a nice, easy one. So I'm just going to plug that in. X is 8, y is 8. And I'm just going to plug it in. 8 minus 7 squared plus 8 minus 5 squared equals to r squared. That's 8 minus 7, which is 1 squared, plus 8 minus 5, which is 3 squared equals to r squared. And we know 1 squared is 1 plus 3 squared, which is 9, equals r squared. So that means r squared equals to 10. And that's as far as we need to go because we're setting up the equation. So I'm going to take this piece right here and I'm going to plug it in right there. So we've already calculated that. That was cell number 2 in this one, but I just calculated it by hand. And I'm going to write out the equation with r squared in it. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to write x minus 7 squared plus y minus 5 squared equals 210. Okay, and there we have it. We've circumscribed that triangle. The circle goes through all of the vertices. Okay, and we had to start by finding the midpoint, then the equation of the line that is perpendicular to that side of the triangle through that midpoint. And then we had to use the equation of the circle. If you did want to find the radius of the circle, just remember the radius would be equal to the square root of 10. And that would give us the radius, so roughly about 3. And you can see that kind of at that diagonal. If you have any questions, feel free to check in with me during Zoom hours, and I can help you out with any information or any questions that you have during Zoom hour office hours.